All right, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Racquel Boyd. I am presenting the session today for you. And what I will do now is just give you a quick introduction to the webinar series that we're running, and then we'll get going with our session today on meaningful engagement, mastering meetings online. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks to you for joining our first webinar of a series of 5 that we currently have scheduled. The current global climate under COVID-19 restrictions is challenging us to move swiftly and adapt even faster. To support you and your organisation to continue to move forward, maintain delivery, and even innovate during these times, we've curated this set of topics in the series in the hope that we can spark some thought, insight, and learning for you. We look forward to you joining each of the webinars over the coming weeks, and we'll have details on the further ones at the end of the session, and the invitations for registration to those will be sent out shortly later on today. Now, as I said, my name is Racquel Boyd. I am the Project Director of Practice and Innovation for KJA, and I'm also a Senior Facilitator with KJA. I have quite extensive experience across workshop design and delivery, learning and development, leadership, training, facilitating conversations, and community engagement. And I've worked with audiences and participants and stakeholders across ANZ, Southeast Asia, the USA, and Europe. I have a background in human resources and postgraduate study and research in coaching psychology. I'm also an accredited facilitator in Lego Serious Play and a DDI leadership program facilitator as well. So that's just to give you a little bit of an idea about me. Now let's start and have a look at our topic for today. So what we're going to, I've gone ahead of myself, bear with me. Here we go. Now, keeping in mind that I could talk about this topic for hours, we have about 30 minutes today, and I've selected what I believe are elements that will elevate your thinking on the good old everyday online meeting. I've focused my approach on providing practical tips as well as thought-provoking information for you to apply as appropriate in your own circumstances. I'm also favouring providing some case studies and a few anecdotes to illustrate the impact of the concepts that we are going to cover today. In fact, I expect that in doing this, you will take away not only some learning and insight into your work-related online interactions, but also into your personal ones, as we're continuing to connect with family and friends via our digital platforms in this time. I also have a challenge for you toward the end of the session when we explore the space in between to encourage and enable meaningful engagement. Now, someone has suggested that I should enable you to have a face to the name and the voice. So right now, you're probably having a little look at me in the webcam. So this is me, and I'll keep the webcam on just for a moment while I talk through just a couple of things around using the software platform before we then move into the webinar. And then I'll take the webcam off so you can listen to me rather than perhaps have to look at me for the next half hour. So as I said, a quick note on the software. You can see on the screen now, you should be able to see my shared screen of a PowerPoint session, also my face, and also the image of the control panel that you should see on your screen as well. So the first thing to note about this is that all participants are automatically muted. So you can self-mute yourself, but I do have a central control where everyone on the call is muted today. During this session, if you have any questions that you'd like to raise or comments to make and talk about, please enter them into the questions box that you'll find by clicking on the question mark on your control panel. And what will happen is toward the end of the session, when we have some time for open question and discussion, is I can go to those and we can talk about them and address them through that time. So if you do think of something right up front, you don't have to wait until the very end or forget about it. Just type it in there and we'll be able to keep track of that. Another thing to note is that today's session is being recorded. And finally, toward the end, as I said, when we have an open session, you'll have the opportunity to raise your hand, and that's just the little hand icon. So a bit like being in school, put your hand up if you have something that you'd like to say or contribute at the time. And then what I can do is unmute you so that you can then speak to the whole group. Now, so that you're aware, we currently have 70 people who are enjoying the webinar so far. So you're in great company. And I thank you all and welcome you all to the session. So with that, I'm going to turn off my face and let's begin. When we work with our clients on stakeholder engagement, in whatever form that is taking, we start with the outcome in mind. What are the outcomes that we need to achieve from the interaction? Now, whether that be to build relationships with stakeholders, to seek their input to a process, to establish trust, to deliver a co-design, to develop a plan, to bring the stakeholders on a journey to anticipate needs and mitigate risks before they eventuate, to enable people to feel good about the project and their part in it. The list is ongoing, but the common themes in the outcomes that we are assessing are what we need to do in the interaction. So what are the deliverables? And then how we want people to feel about the interaction, the experience that we want them to have or that they want to have. So let's start with the deliverables category. We need the interactions to be productive, to produce and deliver, to get things done, make decisions, make plans, generate ideas, organize ourselves. And on the experience category, we need the interactions to leave people feeling valued, like they've had the opportunity to contribute, to be heard, to listen and learn, and to connect with others. Now, these are not definitive lists, but you get the idea of how we need our focus to be on more than one outcome to deliver meaningful engagement. Now, these needs remain true for all interactions, but in this webinar, we will concentrate on how to achieve them in meetings and conversations held in the online environment. So, a quick note on the online environment. Some people get a little fearful of the online environment, even though we are all familiar with it. When we have to conduct meetings, difficult conversations, or even events online, the most experienced of us can get a bit nervous. So I want to position it like this. Whenever we have a meeting or a conversation, we are considering the environment in which we are going to have it. So is it in the boardroom? Is it in a large conference room? Is it outdoors, indoors? What are the acoustics like? Do we have catering? Is there enough coffee? What's the airflow like? What's the temperature? Is it stuffy in that room? Are we going to be walking? Are we going to be seated, standing? These are all things that we consider. So, for example, if we're having a strategy meeting in the boardroom, we may want to make sure that the air conditioning isn't too cold, there is water and coffee available, and there's good natural light. But if the strategy meeting is being conducted online, we may want to make sure that we have a digital software platform that people know how to use, that there are more breaks built in for people to make their own coffee or to go outside, get some fresh air. So online is just another environment. And quite simply, we need to consider and plan for that environment appropriately. So, with a view to the deliverables from our interactions, that is, what do we need to consider to achieve meaningful engagement in the online meetings? Firstly, I say be prepared. Now, if you weren't all on mute, I could hear you saying, I'm sure, hey, Racquel, that's true for any meeting. But in the online environment, we need to take this preparation deeper and broader. Our KJA partner, Darryl Watkins, chairs a number of New South Wales Government community consultative committees for state significant development. His level of preparation for those sessions when conducted online includes a one-on-one phone call prior to each meeting to check in with the individual, ascertain any potential concerns or issues, but also to ascertain any personal circumstances that may impact their contribution or how they may present to the group online. In this level of preparation, Darryl can then support and encourage the individuals through the online meeting. Having a clear agenda, defined timeframes, and a shorter, concise meeting is also a way for us to get this deliverable outcomes. And again, I hear you saying true for any meeting. However, when we look in a moment at some of the statistics on people's attention spans on online meetings, we'll understand the full need for the structure of an online meeting to be tight. In our own monthly KJA executive leadership team meetings, we have timeframes and set durations for each section of our agenda. Now, I will confess, each month when we meet together in the boardroom, we struggle to finish on time, and over time, the 2-hour scheduled meeting has kind of crept up to a 2.5-hour scheduled meeting. Our first online monthly meeting was held a week ago, and it was set for 2 hours, and we nailed it. So I encourage you all to seek the advantage of the online meeting to focus people more and leverage the ability to concentrate sessions into shorter, sharper, more impactful interactions. And then finally, I think one of the really important things is to find a fit for purpose platform. Now, there's a plethora of software available, and on the whole, they all provide pretty similar basic functionality. However, each platform is not necessarily fit for purpose. Collaboration platforms like MS Teams, WebEx, or GoToMeeting are great for internal meetings where teams are gathered, talking to each other, some on mute, some on video, some not, and so on in various configurations. In our personal interactions, our functionality needs may be quite well serviced by Zoom, Skype, or Vimeo. And for events such as this one, platforms like GoToWebinar or MS Teams Live may be better suited. And then extending that further, a platform like Adobe may have even sort of further, more sophisticated functionality that could be, quite specific and meet a very specific need. With this choice, it can be crippling. And I have seen clients in recent weeks grappling over the choice of the perfect platform. For most online meetings or conversations, having an audio function, an integrated webcam, and the ability to screen share is really all you need. I also encourage you to not lose sight of the value in a simple phone call. I have to admit, in the last 6 weeks since we've been in full remote working mode, my telephone has rung far less. But as video call fatigue starts setting in, and we'll talk about that a little later on, I have been using the good old telephone more and more for straightforward one-to-one conversations. Now, let's take a pivot to look at the personal experience outcomes that we want from our online interactions. Now, for me personally, I find this area of online interaction the most fascinating as we can observe our own behaviors in this environment. Anyone hearing the coaching psych in me there? Firstly, I think that the very, very important, right up front, highest priority is to be present. So essentially, rid yourself and others of distractions as much as possible and enable yourself and them to focus and concentrate. Now, Intercore, which is a global conferencing facility provider, conducted some research on what else people do when they're in an online meeting. So let's have a look at what some of these revelations are. So 65% of respondents were completing other work. And I think we could probably, let's try the hands up function. Hands up, everyone, if you've done other work whilst on an online meeting. Find that hand button. Oh, yes, I can see them going up. Absolutely. Now, what you can't see, folks, is that I'm seeing a sea of green hands. And I think for all of us to be true to ourselves, that is exactly what we do tend to do. We have quite a high percentage of people eating or making food, quite a few sending emails. Now, I reckon if I asked people to put their hands up, I'd have a few more going up as well on that one. And then some other interesting ones here in terms of social media, online shopping, and texting. Now, the one in red there, 47% say that they visit the bathroom. I'm not going to make any comment on that, but I'm really hoping that everyone remembers, if they do that, to turn off the video cam. In our current lockdown situation, this is even more challenging because we're faced with children and other members of our household being in and around our workspace. So to be present, and that is ourselves being present, as well as giving our colleagues an opportunity to also be present, we need to eliminate or minimize distractions. I recently conducted a number of online consultation sessions for a federal government client. Now, these were intensive 1 hour sessions, 5 of them across one day with very short breaks in between. I started by closing down every other piece of software on my laptop, other than the digital platform that we were using for the meeting. I advised my team that I was unavailable. I gave them an alternative person to talk to for that period of time. I also gave instruction to my teenager that under no circumstances was he to come wandering into my study when he was bored. And by the way, point of fact, I did the exact same instructions to him around about an hour ago as well. Now, I encouraged my clients to do likewise and to be acutely aware of the application of the mute button to avoid distracting or interrupting the discussions that were being had during the consultation sessions. Now, if you are using a webcam in meetings or conversations online, also be aware of the visual that is projected into other people's view of you. Can an artwork behind you be potentially distracting? I was in an online meeting recently that was connecting about 100 people across the Asia Pacific region. At one point, as we switched to the next presenter, that presenter saw their own visual view on the webcam for the first time on their laptop and began with, "I apologize for the artwork you see behind me. It is an African fertility painting. I will leave the rest to your imagination." Excuse me. So being present also ties in really strongly with keeping the agenda tight, the time frame short, and the interaction impactful. Fundamentally, this is about ensuring that your mind is focused and that you are ready to listen, to hear, to learn, and to do so authentically. I encourage you to also create multiple channels for people to contribute. You know how some people just don't like public speaking? And for many, the threshold for what is public speaking can be as little as 3 or 4 people. In the usual in-person meeting, you can see a person's reaction, even feel their fear at times. So you can adjust, you can purposefully include them or invite their input. In an online meeting, that reticence may be exacerbated. And with the restricted perception available via an online platform, creating multiple channels is therefore even more important when online. Our KJA program director for transport, Tricia Wunsch, is currently chairing a co-design committee for a significant road development. Now, there is a vast array of experience, occupations, age, and tech savvy in the group that she's chairing. To ensure that everyone can contribute their valuable insights in ways that they are comfortable, the channels established within the online meetings for them include an open audio discussion with or without webcam, a typed chat function, the ability to type questions during presentations, and to effectively have a hands-up capability so that those less inclined to jump into an active conversation can wait contentedly until their turn. I also encourage you to be deliberate and specific with your words and your delivery. With this in mind, let's take a look at that restricted perception I mentioned earlier. In-person interactions are well known to be less than 10% about the spoken word. The percentages attributed to our understanding and comprehension are 55% body language, 38% the voice, and only 7% the spoken word. In an online environment, removing the ability to observe and perceive body language significantly changes the dynamic of how people will comprehend and interpret what's being communicated. We need to be really specific about the tone of voice. How are you modulating? How are you making sure that you're not monotonal? Are you being confident? Are you being inviting and personable? And also the choice of word. Being deliberate, being inclusive and encouraging is really important. And avoiding negative phrasing, in particular the double negative, is also really quite essential. Late last year, KJA facilitated a webinar consultation session for Austrade as part of an overall strategy of workshop consultations that we delivered as part of the development of the Tourism 2030 strategy. The workshops were face-to-face and we travelled to all the states to engage in person with stakeholders. However, the nature of the tourism industry is such that they're everywhere. So to reach geographically disparate stakeholders, we conducted the online webinar. As far as possible, for consistency, we replicated the workshop design. However, having assessed our online environment, we were acutely aware that the internet connectivity in regional areas nationally is inconsistent, and it's often inadequate for the level of interaction that we would have preferred. But to ensure that we could make the online alternative as accessible to as many people as possible, we made the decision to not use webcams or live streaming and to use audio only. In this environment, we were stripped back to voice and spoken word. We eliminated all distractions, and in many parts, essentially, we scripted our words to ensure that we were specific and unambiguous. A few practical tips for managing this could be using PowerPoint or other static images or aids when appropriate. Keep it short and sharp. If you feel more comfortable, do script your words and maybe just make that part of your preparation that we talked about earlier. Practice. Listen to yourself. You can record yourself on the mobile phone. It's really, really easy these days. So you can record yourself and listen back. And once you get over the cringiness of having heard yourself recorded, because most of us feel that way, think about how you're coming across. What is your tone of voice like? And how do you think that people will respond and react to you through that medium? Also, avoid using acronyms, jargon, and colloquialisms. Keep it really simple, straightforward, and as conversational as you possibly can. In summary, I like to think of it like this. Speak in such a way that others love to listen to you, and listen in such a way that others love to speak with you. Now, I can hear a few of you saying, but what about webcam? If we've got the webcam on, we can see body language. Well, you can see from the shoulders up. You may not be able to see fidgeting, rocking, agitation, and you can't always see that detail of someone's face around their eyes. Are they squinting? Are they thinking? Are they concerned? So those elements are certainly helped by a webcam, but let's have a little more of, I suppose, a slightly different perspective on the webcam. Because you know what, we do have the facility to use it these days. Every phone and laptop has them. And in our current lockdown situation, anecdotally, I hear that the webcam is getting one heck of a workout. So let's take a look at the webcam. So, to webcam or not to webcam, that is the new question. Look, it's a great tool, but there's a few considerations I really want you to think about when you're using it and when you're planning your online meetings and conversations. The first is authenticity. Now, this is an issue that we're going to have possibly always, at least in our lifetime, when we have online meetings. And that's about the speed, the technical speed between you and me, or you and another person when you're using a webcam. A study in 2014 found that a delay of even 1.2 seconds on a phone or video call made people perceive the responder as less friendly or focused. So with increased usage of our internet capacity during the shutdown period, you know what, it can be really patchy or run a bit slow at peak times, especially if you have children at home also doing virtual classrooms. So as a consequence, that delay can often be longer than 1.2 seconds. Secondly, there's a thing called video performance stress. So when on video, we feel like we're being watched all the time. And the result is that we feel the stress of having to perform all the time that we are on video. How do we look? Am I looking bored? This is just my thinking face, but do I need to smile? What if I momentarily forget that I'm on the video and I sneeze or I scratch? Or, heaven forbid, as a few poor souls did early in lockdown, and many of us have probably seen those viral videos on social media and even the news channels, you know, starting to undress or even go to the bathroom with the webcam on. To avoid these momentary lapses, we have to be always on, and that causes stress. So, going back to our original thoughts on the outcomes that we need from meaningful interactions, being able to be present, focus, listen, contribute, be valued, all of these things are impacted when we are performing. And then there is social complexity theory. Yes, that's a thing. Essentially, we humans tend to compartmentalize our lives to a degree. We keep work, family, friends, sport, hobbies separate. Bringing all work into the home during this lockdown period, and for many that means into our intimate personal space, has crossed over and blurred those compartments. And when that happens, we tend toward more negative feelings. And that's not conducive to meaningful interactions. So use the webcam for sure, but please be aware, just like any environment that you're assessing for a meeting or conversation, of what is fit for purpose and what will support the outcome that you're seeking. A few practical tips if you do choose to use the webcam. Make sure the height of the webcam aligns to your face and shoulders. Put the laptop on a couple of books if you need to bring it up into alignment. As a person on the other side of the webcam, looking up or down at someone can actually be quite distracting in itself. And for some of us of a certain age, avoiding the double chin effect is also very, very useful. Check the light source in the room as well. Make sure that you're not silhouetted. And check that you can look people in the eye when on the call, which means looking up from your notes potentially and looking into the camera, not the image that may be on the screen. I'm just going to demonstrate that briefly, and I'm going to turn my webcam on. It'll just take a moment to come up. There we go. Okay, so I am now looking at the image of myself on the screen. So if you look at my eye line, you'll see that I'm looking a little bit lower, perhaps, than where you are. But if I look at the light on my webcam, and I can look straight down the barrel of that camera. Imagine all of those TV and movie films that are being done, and you hear about looking right down the barrel of the camera. That little light is where you need to look. So to be able to look people in the eye and be really engaging as much as possible in a natural way over a webcam, this is where you need to look. So finally, a key aspect of delivering and enabling the personal experience needs of our interaction to be met online is to allow silence and space. We all need thinking time. And when you consider the various distractions and stresses that we've covered just in today's webinar, allowing silence and space for people in your interactions is paramount. Now, that may take the form of having higher volume or shorter meetings with larger breaks in between so that participants can think and bring more contribution to the next interaction. And in that, I'll draw your attention to the third space. Dr. Adam Fraser, an Australian researcher, has written quite a lot about the third space. Every day, we undertake dozens of different roles, tasks, and experiences. Most of us habitually carry our mindset and emotional state from one of those activities to the next. And all too often, this has negative consequences. The third space is that moment of transition between the first and the second. It's the time between meetings, between phone calls, or in the olden days, it was the commute from home to the office, a train or a bus ride that gave us that space. This third space, used well and purposefully, allows us to mentally show up well for whatever comes next. It can empower you to be consistently at your best for work, for your family, for your friends, and for yourself. So where are these third spaces? Well, like I said, in the olden days, before the shutdown, we had our commute to and from the office. We had time between meetings in the office when you duck off to the bathroom, grab a coffee, chat to a colleague in the kitchen. We could get to a meeting room and breathe for a moment or engage in idle chatter as somebody played around getting the presentation working. In this new remote working world, however, we need to find our new third spaces. Now, importantly, the third space doesn't have to be a huge chunk of time. It can be a minute or simply a long, slow, deliberate breath. With all that we've covered in the session today, even taking a pause can relieve those stresses, enable a mindset reset, and a fresh start to the next meeting that rolls around. The important aspects of the third space is to find the delineations, to acknowledge the end of the previous and the beginning of the next. So taking a moment to align to the stakeholders, the team member or the colleagues you're about to meet, thinking through the required outcomes of that interaction. Who are they? What are their concerns? How do you know how you need to show up for this? What will success look like in this interaction? I mean, personally, I'm trying to chat a bit more at the beginning of meetings and to wrap them up a little early as well. So I can have a chat or go and take a trip to my own kitchen for a cup of tea. At some times during my schedule, I have just enough time to simply pick up my laptop and move to a different chair, facing a different window to give myself a new perspective for my next meeting. I'm also trying to be disciplined and take a walk around the block when I've logged off for the day to simulate my walk home from the station, to give myself time to reset, shake off work self, and come back home as family self. So in the pursuit of having meaningful interactions and mastering meetings online, using the space between the interactions and giving your colleagues an opportunity to use their space will facilitate better outcomes for all involved. So in summary, to master meetings online and have meaningful engagement in those, consider these factors that we've talked through. And then relax and enjoy. All interactions with people are opportunities to learn, to engage, to connect, to be productive, to create and innovate. The online environment can be mastered for all of those outcomes. So now we have an opportunity for some questions and discussion. We've got around about 10 minutes. So I invite you to raise your hand if you would like to contribute. I just realized you've all got your hands up from previously. So if you do have your hand up and you have it up from before, take it down. But if you would like to ask a question or propose some contrary views or to challenge or to contribute, please do keep your hand up or put your hand up and I'll come to you and we can unmute. You also will find your questions button as well on your control panel. So please feel free if you'd like to type that in as well. Okay. I can see that we have a question here from David. David Burt, I'm going to unmute your line, David. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. That's good. One of the questions I had was around the sort of the preferred technology to help community groups continue to have their meetings. Some of the community groups that I have as key stakeholders, they've pretty much cancelled their meetings, and I've said to them, you know, maybe you want to consider having some sort of virtual meeting. But I think some of them are kind of struggling with how they might go about doing that.
Sure. Look, that's a great question, David. Thank you for that. I actually do some work in my personal life with some community volunteer groups. And in fact, one of those, I very recently helped them through the fact that they had to have an AGM. And most of the people on the committee, basically all of the membership were fairly older and were quite nervous about how that would happen. And so I introduced them to the online platforms. And look, I took them straight to GoToMeeting. It's one that I'm familiar with. but a few of them were also quite familiar with Zoom because their kids had gotten them onto it while they were in shutdown. And so, look, I encouraged them to do it and I helped them through the first 2 meetings that they had. And I also facilitated their AGM for them. So the committee is meeting remotely once a month, and the AGM was successfully held, meeting all legal requirements via GoToMeeting. And I think that the key there, David, was the level of support that I actually gave them. And it wasn't a lot of hand-holding, to be honest. I think there was a whole lot of curiosity amongst most of them. But just letting them know that I was there, that I could help them out with it, and get them through the first couple actually made it a bit of a softer landing for them. Now, that said as well, we also had a few people who really weren't comfortable. And so having the traditional audio dial-in option for them was really useful. So they just got to sit at home with their normal landline telephone and participate that way. And so they were able to engage using the mechanism that was most comfortable for them. Thank you, David. Now, I've had a couple of questions come online. Now, Ian, you've asked why Zoom versus, say, webinar? What are the criteria for choosing? Look, I think, as I said before, Ian, the choice can be crippling. And I think I apply the old 80-20 rule to a number of different things, pretty much most things in life, I suppose. And so with the choice of platform, I really look for what is the basic functionality. If they do the basic functionality well, you're about 80% there. And the rest of it, you can kind of make it do what you need to do, or you just do without. So I think the big difference between, say, a Zoom and a webinar is that a webinar like this is actually set up for example, with GoToWebinar, it's set up to take up to 5,000 people. Zoom is not. So the functionality that's available, the control panel that's available, so what I can see and do and control as the organizer is far, far more sophisticated than something like Zoom. And so that again goes to the fit for purpose. If you don't need the facilities of a webinar, then a meeting is just perfectly fine. Okay, I have a few other people with their hands up. I'm going to go to Karen Gibb. Karen, I'm just going to unmute your line now. Please proceed.
We do a lot of redevelopment and renewal in social housing areas, and some of the areas we develop impact a number of private owners. And during the master plan consultation, how would we encourage owners who are bordering our redevelopment to join us on an online consultation?
Right, okay, so just so that I'm clear on that, so you've got some community members, so some stakeholders who are sort of fairly directly impacted by the projects you're
That's
undertaking.
Right.
And
we haven't got a strong relationship. We haven't got a strong relationship with them up until now, when our development will have an impact on their lives. And if we're doing this during COVID, how could we encourage them to take part in a consultation? Normally we'd hire a church hall and do a consultation there over a number of weekends or at night.
Of course, yes, yes. Look, in fact, that's a really great question. Actually, I'm going to mute you back again there, Karen. Sorry. Oh, no, sorry, Karen. I think there was a bit of feedback there on the line.
Got feedback. You are. Would a letterbox drop be enough to encourage them with the details of the online meeting?
Right, I see. Yes, actually, Karen, we've done a number of those ourselves for clients where we've done a combination of things. So yes, where we normally would say have a public gathering, perhaps that would mean we put posters up around the neighbourhood, we do a letterbox drop, we may put advertisements in the local paper, particularly in regional areas, we may use community news boards or social media news boards to be able to reach out to people so that we can get them to, encourage them to say, come to the town hall. Or whatever that is physically. All of those engagement techniques to get people to be aware of and to encourage them to join still remain true. So even in the restrictions that we have, we can do letterbox drops, and we have been doing a number of those for some of our clients who are doing some construction, some transport construction at the moment. So that certainly stays true. Where we have the knowledge of stakeholders' email addresses safe, if perhaps we have engaged them in some way, shape or form previously, then we would send them a direct email. But letterbox drops, I think, are probably, for the people that we aren't yet engaged with or know, is probably the most effective for getting people's attention at this point in time. Now, there could be a number of ways to do it, but I think that's all still very valid. And really what we're doing is, instead of directing them to the physical town hall at 7:30 on Tuesday night, what we're directing them to is our online town hall at 7:30 on Tuesday night. So again, back to what I said about the environment being, the online world just being another environment. Instead of looking at how we would do it in the town hall, we look at how we do it online. And I think that if we think about it from that perspective, we'd be able to actually get people involved and engaged in that same way. I actually have a client I'm working with at the moment who has already done, I think, 8 town hall sessions that we've done around the regions for the particular piece of work they're doing in regional New South Wales and Victoria. That was about 6 months ago. To follow up the really important work that's being done in that space, they committed to doing another series of town halls once the reports and recommendations were written and presented to the minister. So now physically we can't go back to those same 8 town halls. So instead we are going to be running them online, and we are engaging with them the same way. And we are actually a little bit expecting that we might have more people attend, because it's a lot easier to join the town hall from your lounge room on a Tuesday night than perhaps to drag yourself out of the house after dinner. I hope that answers your question, Karen, but happy to follow up later for some further conversation around that. Okay, I'm just very conscious of time. We are right on 1:45. I do have a number of people with their hands up. What I would encourage you to do is to pop your question into the questions box, because what I will do is come and follow up and address those questions with you following the webinar. So I'll contact you later on today and have some follow-up with you around those specific questions. So to wrap up our webinar, I will just alert you to the next in our series. So we have 4 coming up, 1 each week on a Thursday at 1 o'clock. So a real variety of topics here. And as I said at the beginning, we have curated some topics that we feel may provide you insights and thought-provoking conversations as we work through particularly this COVID-19 period of time. Now, the invitations will come out for these this afternoon. And so please, if you don't get one, please do let me know. You should all have my contact details in the reminder that you received for your registration today. So please don't hesitate to get in contact with me so that I can make sure that you receive your invitation. Now, it has been an absolute pleasure to spend this time with you today. I thank you all very much for your attendance, for your attention, and for your very thoughtful questions. I'm sorry I haven't been able to get to as many of them in the live session, but I will definitely come to you separately and speak to you about those. So please have a wonderful day, stay safe and stay well. Goodbye.